Note to companies, return to office policies require office space.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Rubrik, dedicated to giving businesses the power to bounce back fast when cyber attacks target the cloud. More at Rubrik.com.
I'm David Brancaccio. On this first workday of the new year, Amazon Office's workforce is returning to a full work from work, not from home schedule. There's been a lot of pushback from employees, and the company may be struggling to live up to its end of the bargain. With reports, some of its offices do not have enough room for the people coming back. Marketplace's Nova Safo has more.
Amazon's CEO Andy Jassy has said that workers need to return to offices full-time in order to maintain a strong company culture and to make it easier to collaborate and invent. Many Amazon workers apparently are unimpressed. There have been anecdotal reports of employees quitting over the in-office mandate. And Bloomberg says the company delayed the requirement for thousands of employees in several cities because it doesn't have enough workspaces for them and won't for months. UPS, Boeing, and other large firms have issued similar mandates. Despite those high-profile examples, though, government data shows that the portion of the overall U.S. workforce that's teleworking has actually increased over the last 2 years from 18 to 23%. I'm Nova Safo for Marketplace.
As we've been tracking, the widely owned S&P 500 stock index went up 24% in the year just ended. It's the second year in a row above 20%. 10% is the average since 1957. Meanwhile, the dollar went up 6% in 2024, closing out New Year's Eve on its high of the year, which is great if you're a U.S. traveler abroad, but not so good for others. Marketplace's Mitchell Hartman has that.
The strength of the dollar relative to other major currencies reflects the strength of the U.S. economy, says Ishwar Prasad at Cornell University.
The U.S. economy is doing very well, and the rest of the world is floundering. China, Germany, Japan, and even India are all losing growth momentum.
And what's coming soon from the Trump administration could deepen the divide.
Tariffs are actually going to hurt the rest of the world a lot more than the U.S.
Because most other countries depend a lot more on exports and trade than we do. Meanwhile, inflation in the U.S. remains stubbornly high, meaning the Federal Reserve will likely leave interest rates here higher for longer compared to other major central banks, which will also drive the dollar higher. I asked Bill Mers at U.S. Bank to explain.
If you go back to Finance 101 textbooks,
I didn't take it in college.
One of the first things we learn is interest rate differentials and the impact on currencies. With higher interest rates in one location relative to another, that typically begets flows into that currency that offers more yield.
So more foreign investment will flow into the U.S., and so will more cheap imports, good for U.S. consumers. But U.S. exporters' products become more expensive for customers abroad. Others suffer from a strong dollar as well, says Ross Mayfield at Baird, which is a marketplace underwriter.
If you're a U.S. investor and you own Chinese stocks, and for corporate profits earned overseas, you translate those profits back to U.S. dollars, you have less at the end of the day.
Finally, says Mayfield, the dollar is a safe haven asset.
So when times are good and the U.S. economy is strong, it's the place to be. And when things are scary, it's the place to be.
Meaning, Mayfield says, the dollar's likely to remain strong through 2025. I'm Mitchell Hartman for Marketplace.
A euro costs just $1.03 this morning. I see S&P futures are now up 0.8%.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Schwab. Schwab offers investors choices like full-service wealth management, self-directed investing options, and trading on Thinkorswim. More at Schwab.com.
You don't want the power to go out, especially if it's really hot or, like now, cold. Today, a story about resilience in the electricity grid. It's from Texas, where there's data from the Dallas Federal Reserve that finds a jump in local people and local businesses setting up what are called microgrids, given the Texas history of big power failures. Here's Marketplace's Elizabeth Trovall.
While generators and microgrids both provide backup power, there's a key difference between the two, says Mahmoud Kabalan with the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota. A generator
can be sitting there idling for many years until something happens and then it kicks in.
But a microgrid
is running 24/7.
It's generating and supplying its own power in tandem with the grid, whether or not there's an outage. It generates from sources like
Diesel, natural gas, and combination with renewable energy like solar.
microgrids are used by the military, says Kabbalan, and by other institutions where loss of power can be critical, says George Gross with the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign.
We're seeing universities, for example, becoming a microgrid, and hospitals.
And increasingly commercial enterprises. From 2016 to 2023, microgrid installation nearly doubled nationally, says Prithvi Kalkunte with the Dallas Fed. While in Texas, it's
grown exponentially since like 2016.
From around 20 to 300 installations.
We see the pickup after Hurricane Harvey. A lot of businesses, including H-E-B and Buc-ee's, have chosen to add microgrids, partially for reliability, and then partially also so that they can have electricity close to the site when outages are kind of costly for those businesses.
And it's not just a way for Texas businesses to avoid outages. They might even make a buck selling their power back into the grid. Energy consultant Doug Lewin.
There's all these different layers of benefits. Obviously, one of those layers is the ability to earn revenue from the market.
He says while it's more expensive to generate power from a microgrid, the resilience, independence, and chance to sell back some of that power can make it worth it. In Houston, I'm Elizabeth Troval for Marketplace.
And there's news members of the Dartmouth College basketball team have abandoned their effort to unionize. The team had voted in March to form a bargaining unit, but Bloomberg Law is reporting that the Service Employees Union local is betting the incoming Trump administration will appoint members of the National Labor Relations Board who would thwart their efforts. The current NLRB had deemed players were employees entitled to unionize. Relatively few people signed up for unemployment benefits in the last week. There's news of that this morning, but that could be end-of-year holiday distortions. I'm David Brancaccio. You're listening to the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.